Some inventions change a city. Some might change a country. But the steam engine, well, that changed the entire world. But this isn't a story about one person having a single flash of genius. Nope, it was more like a giant, sprawling puzzle that took centuries to solve. All right, let's dive in and see how all the pieces finally came together.
So, to understand why this puzzle absolutely had to be solved, we need to start with a question. A very urgent and very, very wet question that was facing Britain back in the 17th century. What do you do when the very thing that's driving all your progress is about to drown itself?
And that brings us to the first part of our story. We're talking about a critical, almost desperate need that kicked off a huge race for innovation, a problem that was, kind of ironically, born from their own success.
Okay, so picture this. By the year 1700, Britain is basically a nation powered by coal. I mean, they were digging up nearly 3 million tons of it every single year. That's 5 times more than the rest of the world combined. This stuff was heating homes, it was fueling new industries, it was the lifeblood of the economy.
But, and it's a big but, there was a catch. To get more coal, you had to dig deeper. And the deeper you dug, the more the mines just filled up with water. They were literally hitting a wall, or I guess a water table, that was threatening to shut down the most important industry in the entire country. Progress was about to grind to a very soggy halt.
And this wasn't some small, niche problem that only a few people worried about. Oh no, it was a national obsession. Just look at this. Between 1561 and 1642, a staggering 1 out of every 7 patents filed in England was for some kind of newfangled device to raise water. Everybody and their brother was trying to solve this puzzle, but they were all missing some really crucial pieces.
You see, before they could build the solution, they had to understand the science. And the key to this incredible new power source, ironically enough, was understanding the power of, well, nothing. The power of a vacuum.
And this right here is the heart of it, atmospheric pressure. Scientists like Torricelli and Pascal were starting to realize that we all live at the bottom of a huge ocean of air, and the weight of all that air above us is just immense. They figured, hey, if you could somehow remove the air from one side of an object, create a vacuum, the atmosphere would push on the other side with an incredible amount of force.
This is where a French scientist named Denis Papin enters the picture. He came up with this brilliant, really simple demonstration. You put a little bit of water in a cylinder, you heat it up to create steam, and that steam pushes a piston up. Simple enough. But here's the magic trick. You then cool the cylinder down. The steam instantly condenses back into a tiny drop of water, creating a vacuum. And what happens next? The atmosphere just slams that piston back down. That was it. That was the core mechanical principle they'd been looking for.
So, the need was crystal clear, and the science was finally falling into place. Now it was time for the builders, the tinkerers, and the engineers to start actually assembling these puzzle pieces into a real working machine.
And it definitely wasn't a single eureka moment. In 1698, you had Thomas Savery, who built the miner's friend. Problem was, he used high-pressure steam and had a really nasty habit of exploding. Not so friendly. Then in 1712, Thomas Newcomen brilliantly puts all the parts together, using Papin's vacuum idea to create the first truly successful engine. For more than 50 years, these things were the workhorses pumping water out of mines. And later on, a guy named John Smeaton comes along and applies some real scientific study to make them even better.
And this quote just brilliantly captures the scale of what Newcomen pulled off. The historian L.T.C. Rold puts it perfectly. He says, look, while some people saw the engine as just a mashup of existing ideas, the real wonder is that one person could make such a staggering advance with the pretty primitive tools they had back then. But the puzzle still wasn't completely solved. See, Newcomen's engine worked, but man, was it a gas guzzler. It burned through absolute mountains of coal. The machine was powerful, sure, but it was incredibly wasteful. It took one more genius to look at all the same puzzle pieces and rearrange them in a way nobody had ever thought of before.
So here it is, the big idea. James Watt, while he was repairing a model of a Newcomen engine, has this incredible flash of insight in 1765. The old engine wasted a ton of energy, heating its cylinder with steam and then immediately cooling it with cold water, over and over and over. Watt's idea was so simple but so revolutionary. Why are we doing the cooling in the main cylinder? Let's do it somewhere else. He added a second vessel, a separate condenser. Now the main cylinder could stay hot all the time, a total game changer.
And the result of that one change? It was absolutely breathtaking. His new engine could do the exact same amount of work, but use just a quarter of the fuel. Suddenly,
Steam power wasn't just for coal mines that had cheap fuel right next door. It was becoming affordable for everyone, everywhere.
So, this wasn't just a tiny improvement. Watt's innovation basically kicked off a chain reaction of advancements, and that led to an almost unbelievable exponential leap in power and efficiency over the next few decades.
And this slide, this tells the whole story in just a few numbers. I mean, look at this. Newcomer's original engine had a thermal efficiency of 0.5%. That means 99.5% of the energy from the coal was just gone, wasted. Smeaton improves it. Then Watt comes along and doubles it, and then doubles it again. By the time you get to Trevithick's high-pressure engine, efficiency had jumped all the way to 17%. That is a 34-fold increase from where they started. The puzzle was solved.
And with that solution, the entire world was about to change in ways that absolutely no one could have predicted. This wasn't just a better water pump anymore. This was the engine of a whole new era. Once Watt also figured out how to make it produce rotary motion, turn a wheel, the steam engine broke free from the mines forever. It became the literal beating heart of the Industrial Revolution. It powered factories, it drove railways and steamships, it pulled people away from farms into these new bustling cities, and it connected the entire globe through trade and migration on a scale that was just unimaginable before.
At its very core, the genius of the steam engine was that it was portable. You could put a reliable, tireless source of power pretty much anywhere you could get two simple things: coal and water.
And because power was no longer tied to the flow of a river, cities just exploded. People flocked from the countryside to new industrial centers that seemed to spring up practically overnight. And finally, on rails and on waves, it just shrank the world. It made travel and trade faster, cheaper, and way more reliable than ever before, connecting continents in a way that was completely new.
So, the story of the steam engine really shows us that these world-changing breakthroughs are rarely just a single event. They're a process, a puzzle assembled piece by piece over generations. It's driven by a desperate need, unlocked by science, and then perfected by tireless innovators. Which kind of leaves us with one last thought. What great challenge of our time is just a few puzzle pieces away from being solved?